Hi you guys, welcome back to the Gyan Dive. I'm so glad you're here today because we're diving into something that honestly I'm still processing myself. And as you can tell, I'm not the highest version self today, but it's okay to have those days where you don't feel the best, and it's okay. We're human, That's the whole point. And today we're going to be talking about something that's deeply relevant to my own life. And I often do that where I look at situations that I'm going through myself, and they're sometimes painful, they're sometimes not the best, and I take the Gita's wisdom and try to turn it around for myself and for all of you in the process. And I just want to say I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to do so, and I'm so grateful that I have this podcast, and I'm also grateful to you listeners that decide to tune into this and take something for themselves. So when I'm making this episode, I know that it's not only for you guys, but it's also for myself, especially the one today. So today we're talking about standing firm in your boundaries, even when it disappoints the people that you might love the most. Yeah, I feel like this topic is deeply relevant for me right now, and I know that a lot of you are going through similar situations where this might apply to you, so I hope you enjoy today's episode. So, it's about standing firm in your boundaries, even when it disappoints the people you love the most, even when it makes you the villain in their story, even when they call you selfish, ungrateful, or even a bad daughter. And I'm gonna be honest with you, something happened today that brought up all of this for me in the rawest way possible. So I'm presenting myself in my most vulnerable state, and it is really hard for me to do this, honestly. I don't know, I feel like I'm supposed to, not show the side of me at times, and that I'm supposed to be a certain way, but this episode will talk about this. But I just wanted to say that I want to show up as my most authentic self today, because I think that's what's truest to me in this moment, and I hope that this gives you courage to do so in the same way, no matter what the consequence. So this episode is coming straight from the heart, straight from the wound that's still fresh, and I think that's exactly when we need to talk about all these things. Not when we've got it all figured out, not when we're perfectly healed, but right in the middle of it. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's dive in. So let's talk about boundaries, the reality of boundaries. So here's what nobody tells you about boundaries. They're not comfortable, they're not pretty, and they definitely don't make you the most liked person. When you set a boundary, especially with family, especially with your parents, you're not going to get a round of applause. You're probably going to get guilt, manipulation, silent treatment, or in my case, being told that I'm a bad daughter because I dared to choose myself. I want to share what happened because I know so many of you are going through similar things. So today I wanted to do something for myself, something that felt aligned with who I am and where I'm going. My parents didn't like it the most, not because it was wrong, not because it was dangerous, not because it was harmful, but because it wasn't what they wanted. Because I was choosing my path over their expectations. And when I stood my ground and when I set my boundary, when I said, I hear you, but I'm still doing this, I became the bad daughter, the ungrateful child, the disappointment. And here's the thing that's been sitting heavy on my heart. Why is it that when we choose ourselves, we're selfish, but when we abandon ourselves to please others, that's called being good? Why is it that our boundaries are seen as disrespectful, but their expectations and control are seen as love? Something is deeply wrong with that equation, because I think real love, and I mean real love, doesn't require you to betray yourself. I don't think so. Real love doesn't make you choose between honoring them and honoring yourself. And real love doesn't weaponize guilt to keep you small and compliant. And today, I had to make a hard choice to be the good daughter who abandons herself, or be the daughter who chooses truth and chooses herself even if it disappoints everyone. I chose the latter, and it hurt. It still hurts. There's no winning here. But you want to know what would hurt me more? Looking back at my life and realizing I sacrificed my truth, my peace, my path just to avoid their disappointment. So I decided to look to the Bhagavad Gita for wisdom, as I always do, and I decided to make this episode and share with you what the Bhagavad Gita says about boundaries. So the Bhagavad Gita really understands this exact conflict that we're talking about. Think about Arjuna on the battle of Kurukshetra. He's standing there looking at his own family, his teachers, his cousins, his elders, and Krishna is telling him that he has to fight. He has to stand in his Dharma, even though that means going against the people he loves and respects. And what does Arjuna say? He's drowning in guilt, and he says, "How can I fight against my own family? Wouldn't it be better to just give up, to avoid this conflict, to not disappoint them?" Does that sound familiar? This is the people pleaser in all of us. This is the part that would rather betray our own truth than face someone's disappointment. But here's what Krishna tells him, and this is really important, I think. Your dharma, your truth, your path, your authentic self is not negotiable, is not up for negotiation. So in chapter 2, verse 47, Krishna says, "You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction." So let me break this down in the context of boundaries and what I picked up from this. So firstly, you have a right to your dharma, to your truth. So your boundary is your duty to yourself. You have every right to honor it. Secondly, you are not entitled to the fruits of action. This means you can't control how people react to your boundary. Your parents might be disappointed. The people around you might not like it the most. They might be angry. They might be upset. They might even call you selfish. That is their reaction, and you are not responsible for managing their emotions. And thirdly, never consider yourself the cause of their reaction. Their disappointment is not your fault. I feel like I'm speaking to myself in this, because I feel like I truly am. And yeah, their anger is not your burden. Their inability to respect your boundary is not your responsibility to fix. And fourth, nor be attached to inaction. Don't abandon your boundary just because it's uncomfortable. Don't betray yourself just to keep the peace. Do you see how powerful this is? Krishna is literally telling Arjuna and telling us that we must stand firm in our truth, even when it disappoints others, even when it creates conflict, and even when we're misunderstood. Because here's another little gem from the Gita, chapter 3, verse 35. It is better to perform one's own dharma, even though imperfectly, than to accept another's dharma and perform it perfectly. Translation, it's better to honor your truth imperfectly than to perfectly mold yourself into what others want you to be. That is very relevant. It's better, in my case, to be a bad daughter who is true to herself than a good daughter who has abandoned her soul. Now, I know what some of you might also be thinking, but what about respecting our parents? What about honoring our elders? Isn't that a part of our dharma too? Yes, it is, absolutely. But respect doesn't mean obedience. Honor doesn't mean losing yourself. The Gita teaches us about sthita prajna, the person of steady wisdom. This is someone who is grounded in their own truth, who cannot be swayed by external praise, blame, pleasure, or pain. And I think we've talked about this before, like staying steady and equanimity. I think this really reflects that concept. In chapter 2, verse 56, one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger is called a sage of steady mind. When you set a boundary and people get upset, that's the test. Can you stay steady in your own truth, in your own Dharma? Can you remain grounded even when they try to shake you with guilt, anger, or disappointment? That's steadiness, that's your spiritual practice, and that's your growth. Now let's talk for a minute about people-pleasing and the cost of people-pleasing. So let's talk about what happens when we don't set boundaries, when we choose to please others at the expense of ourselves. And I feel like, especially in brown culture and as girls, we're taught to be people pleasers, and being a people pleaser is often praised and honored and respected, and you're conditioned to be this way. I don't know about you guys, put it down in the comments what your experience has been, but for the most part, I think that this is something that we've all experienced. So let me tell you, people pleasing is not kindness. Let me say that again. People pleasing is not kindness. It's self-abandonment. And self-abandonment is something that we've been taught to do since we were little girls, to keep the peace, to make others happy. When you say yes, when your whole body is screaming no, you're betraying yourself. When you smile through something that makes you uncomfortable just to avoid conflict, you're teaching people that your comfort does not matter. When you shrink yourself to fit into someone else's expectations, you're committing violence against your own soul. And here's the really painful truth. The people that you're trying so hard not to disappoint, they're still going to be disappointed at some point. You can contort yourself into 1,000 different shapes, and there will still be something they wish you were doing differently. And this speaks to me on such a deep level, because I feel like there are some people that simply will not be happy or will not be pleased no matter what I do, right? I'm sure you guys have experienced this person too, or these people too in your life, that no matter what you do, let's say you do it to make them happy, or you do it so that they're not disappointed, no matter what you do, they're not going to be satisfied. They're not going to be happy at the end of the day. You can sacrifice your dreams, your peace, your authenticity, and it still won't be enough. So if disappointment is inevitable, why not disappoint them while honoring yourself instead of disappointing them while also abandoning yourself? The Gita talks about this in chapter 6, verse 5. One must deliver oneself by one's own efforts and not degrade oneself. The mind can be the friend and also the enemy of self. When we people please, when we're degrading ourselves, we're making our mind the enemy because we're choosing their approval over our own truth. But when we set boundaries, we're delivering ourselves. We're making our mind the friend because we're choosing alignment over approval. I want you to pause right here and ask yourself, what is the cost of constantly abandoning yourself? And that's a question for me too. Really sit with that. Where in your life are you abandoning yourself to please others? Maybe it's with your parents, like me. Maybe it's with your partner, your friends, your boss. Where are you saying yes where everything in you is screaming no? Because here's what that abandonment really costs us. Anxiety, because you're always monitoring everyone else's emotions instead of honoring your own. Resentment. Yep, resentment. Because deep down, you know you're betraying yourself, and that anger has to go somewhere. It stays in your body and it accumulates over time, and it slowly forms unshakable resentment in you. Thirdly, loss of self. Because over time, you forget who you even are underneath all the masks you wear for others. Fourth, broken relationships. Yes, ironically, people-pleasing destroys relationships too, because there's no real intimacy when one person is constantly performing. And here's what really gets me. When you constantly prioritize others' comfort over your own truth, you're teaching them that love means self-sacrifice. You're modeling that boundaries are bad, that your needs don't matter, that keeping the peace is more important than keeping your soul intact. Is that really the life you want to live? Is that really the legacy you want to pass down? So, I've gone through everything. I've gone through what people-pleasing is, what a lack of boundaries will do to you, what the cost of it is. So now let's look at ways to stay firm with practical wisdom. So we know why boundaries matter, but how do we actually stay firm when the guilt is crushing and the people that we love are disappointed? Here's what I have learned and what the Gita teaches us. First, get clear on your Dharma. Before you can stand firm in your boundary, you need to know why it matters. What is your truth? What is your path? What feels aligned to you? You need to get crystal clear on that. I want you to pause and ask yourself right now, what is my Dharma in this situation? Not what your parents want, not what your friends want, not what society wants. Not what would make you look good on Instagram. What does your soul know is right for you? Because trust me, you know this deep down. You may not be in touch with it, and you may not be in touch with it because you don't connect with it on a daily basis, because you base your sense of self and your self-worth on other people, that you fail to look inward and know that the wisdom that you're looking for externally lies within. That you know exactly what you want at the end of the day. No one else does. So all you have to do is connect with that part of you and truly get clear on what you want. So when you're crystal clear on your Dharma, other people's opinion become background noise. Not because you don't care about them, but because you know that abandoning your truth would be abandoning your purpose. And I think this also relates to self-love, because you cannot abandon yourself. And that's something that we talked about in the last episode. That the way you talk to yourself and the way that you are for yourself matters the most at the end. And that's what should be most important to you. Your opinion of yourself and what you think. And everything external automatically becomes background noise once you have this mentality. So I want you guys to take a moment after this episode and journal on this. Get quiet and listen to that inner voice that knows. Secondly, detach from the outcome. That's easy to say again, but hard to practice. This is that Krishna wisdom that we talked about earlier. You set the boundary, you speak your truth, and then you release control over how they respond. Their anger, not yours to fix. Their disappointment, not yours to manage. Their guilt trip, not yours to carry. Ask yourself, what would change in my life if I truly released responsibility for others' reactions? What would open up for me if I stopped trying to manage everyone's emotions? Just take a moment and think about it truly. That freedom that you're imagining right now, that's available to you. It starts with detachment. Practice saying, I love you and I'm still doing this. Both things can be true. Thirdly, remember, discomfort is not the same as danger. So when you set a boundary and people get upset, your nervous system might go into panic mode. You might feel like you're in danger, like something terrible is happening. But discomfort is not danger. Their disappointment will not kill you. Their silent treatment will not destroy you. Their disapproval does not mean that you're wrong. Even when everyone keeps saying that you're wrong, even if 100 people around you, including the ones that you love the most, are telling you you're wrong, if you truly know in your heart what you stand for, what your Dharma is, and why you did what you did, and you stand in that truth and you're firm with it, nothing can shake that. No one can shake that. Everyone can say that you're wrong. Everyone can think you're wrong and point fingers at you. But if you are firm in yourself and you know your Dharma, you will be unshakable. Will it bother you here and there? Absolutely. You're a human being. It's bound to disturb you in some way or the other, especially if you're extra sensitive and emotional. But does that mean that you will stop standing in what you know is right for you and your Dharma? No. No. So breathe through discomfort. It's important to sit with that discomfort because so many of us cannot sit in discomfort. We immediately go to our phones, we immediately go to TikTok, go to Instagram, look at Reels, look at TikToks, and just, distract ourselves from the discomfort. But it's so important to sit with that discomfort and remind yourself that it's okay to feel this discomfort. It's okay. And I can sit with it and I can get through this. And that they're emotions and they are fleeting. They will pass. As soon as I truly sit down with them and feel them, they will leave. They will go. They will come to an ending of some sort. So in this moment, ground yourself and remind yourself, I am safe even when others are upset with me. Also, stop defending your boundaries. This is a big one. When you over-explain or over-justify your boundary, you're unconsciously communicating that it's up for debate. It's not. No is a complete sentence. I've made my decision is enough. You don't owe anyone a dissertation on why you're choosing yourself. And again, as brown girls, even if we do set boundaries, we're so tempted to be like, oh no, no, I can't make, let's say your friend asks you if you want to go somewhere and you're still in the people pleaser mentality. You'd be like, no, I'm sorry, I can't go because this happened. I'm so sorry, I'll make it up to you, this. But why? Why can't you just say no and be okay with it? Why do you have to explain yourself? There is no need to explain yourself. So here's a question to sit with. What boundary do I need to set that I've been avoiding? What have I been over-explaining, over-justifying, or apologizing for when I shouldn't be? Just pause real quick and think about it and write it down. This is where healing happens, guys. It's not when you listen to these podcasts and you just listen to it in the moment and you feel better for the moment. It's when you actually sit with yourself and do the inner work and reflect when you actually come to a real change in yourself and in your 3D, in your reality. Because again, all changes occur from the inside out, like we discussed. Every change that you make on the inside is reflected in your reality. So that's why inner work is so important. So write it down, get clear on it, and then practice stating it simply without the explanation, without the defense. The Gita teaches us about yukta vairagya, balanced attachment. You can love someone and not take on their emotional reactions. You can care about someone and still prioritize your truth. Another tip is find your anchor. What keeps you grounded when everyone around you is trying to shake you? For me personally, it's coming back to the Gita. It's meditation, it's journaling, and it's talking to the people who I can trust, who I feel safe with, and who get it. You know those people in your life. They're not many, and you can probably count them on your fingers, but they're the people that you truly feel like you can rely on and talk to and bank on to help you ground. Not saying that you have to rely on other people to help you regulate your own emotions, but sometimes it's important to also have that external support, to have the people who love you be there for you. We need to let that happen. We're taught so often that you just need to rely on yourself, that's all you need, but that's not true. As human beings, we crave connection and we need it at times. So allow yourself to receive that support from the people that you truly trust and feel safe with. Find practices that remind you of who you are when the world is trying to tell you who you should be. So what are those practices for you? Again, I want you guys to take a moment and think about it and maybe even write it down, because oftentimes I find that writing down my thoughts really helps me, because I feel like when I'm just thinking about my thoughts, they're just in my head and I really don't have clarity. I'm just kind of all over the place. But when I write things down, it seems tangible to me. So I recommend that. Another thing is give yourself permission to grieve. Here's something that nobody talks about. Setting boundaries with family means grieving the fantasy of who you wish they could be. It means accepting that they might never understand you. They might never celebrate your growth. They might always see your boundaries as betrayal. And that's something that's taken me a long time to, find peace with. And I think I still am in that process. I've surely gotten to a better place than I was when I started because of this journey of inner work and self-love, but I'm still getting there. You're not perfect. It takes time. So I just hope that we all can get to that point where we're able to accept that people who are not happy when we choose ourselves or set our boundaries might never understand us. And we need to get comfortable with that. We need to be okay with that. And we need to know that as long as we're standing in our Dharma and we're rock solid in the idea of prioritizing ourselves, loving ourselves, and as long as we do have a support system of people who love us and cherish us for who we are without them wanting us to be a certain way, I want you to have the strength and the courage to be able to stand your ground with that, no matter what. And that hurts. It does hurt. Let it hurt. Cry about it, journal about it, talk about it. But don't let that pain convince you to abandon yourself. Remember the long game. In this moment, it might feel easier to just give in, to avoid the conflict, to be the good daughter in my case. But think about yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at the end of your life. Would you be proud that you stayed small to keep others comfortable? Or will you be grateful that you choose yourself and you choose your truth even when it was hard? Think about it. Who do you want to be? Think about your highest self that we talked about in the last episode. What would truly make you proud? The Gita reminds us in chapter 2, verse 14, the contacts of the senses with their objects bring cold and heat, pleasure and pain. These are temporary and fleeting. Endure them bravely. So the discomfort that you're feeling, it's temporary, but the regret of abandoning yourself, that lasts forever. And that's not a regret that you want to live with. I always think to myself, whenever I'm living my life or whenever I'm trying to do my inner work, what version of me would make my highest self the proudest of me? What would me 10 years later be proud of when they look back and think about me? I want to be that person. I want to be that person where I can be proud of myself, first of all. And here's a love letter to anyone who feels guilty, including me. So if you're listening to this and if you feel guilty right now, guilty for wanting to set boundaries, guilty for disappointing your parents, guilty for choosing yourself, I want to talk to you directly. First, your guilt is not proof that you are wrong. Guilt just means that you've been conditioned to believe that your needs are less important than others' expectations. It means that you were taught that good people sacrifice themselves. It means that you've internalized the belief that love equals compliance. But that's not the truth. That's trauma and that's conditioning. And you have the opportunity to unlearn it. You get to do that. Second, you are not responsible for their healing. If your boundary triggers them, that's information about their wounds, not your wrongness. You're not required to stay small so they feel comfortable. You're not required to abandon your growth so they don't have to face their own. Your evolution is not a betrayal. Your growth is not abandonment. Your boundaries are not attacks. Third, choosing yourself is not selfish. Louder for the people in the back. Choosing yourself is not selfish. Selfish is demanding that someone abandon their truth to serve your comfort. Selfish is manipulating someone with guilt when they set a boundary. Selfish is making someone responsible for your emotional reactions. Honoring your needs, that's self-love, that's self-respect, and that's self-preservation. And finally, you can love them and still choose yourself. This is not either or. You don't have to cut them off or hate them to have boundaries. You can love them deeply, honor them, respect them, and still say no, and still choose your path, and still protect your peace. Love does not require self-betrayal. The Gita teaches us that real love is prem, unconditional and selfless love. But prem flows both ways. If you're constantly giving and they're constantly taking, if you're always bending and they're never flexing, if your needs are always secondary, that's not love. That's conditioning masquerading as devotion. You deserve to be loved as you are, not as they wish you would be. So here's what I want to leave with you today. Your boundaries are sacred. They're not up for negotiation. They're not unkind. They're not disrespectful. They are the way you honor the divine truth within you. When you stand firm in your boundaries, you're not just protecting yourself, you're modeling what self-respect looks like. You're teaching others how to love without losing themselves. You're breaking generational patterns for us brown people of people-pleasing and self-abandonment. And yes, it's going to be super uncomfortable. Yes, people are going to be disappointed. Yes, you might be called selfish or difficult or even a bad daughter. But remember what Krishna taught Arjuna. Stand in your Dharma, do your duty to yourself, and release the attachment to how others respond. You're not here to live someone else's version of your life. You're not here to shrink so others feel big. You're not here to abandon your soul to avoid their disappointment. You're here to honor your truth, to walk your path, to protect your peace, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And I'm there with you, learning this in real time, stumbling through it, feeling the guilt and grief and choosing myself anyway. Because at the end of the day, I'd rather be true than be comfortable. I'd rather be authentic than be approved of. I'd rather disappoint them while honoring myself than please them while betraying my soul. And I hope you choose that too. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for diving deep with me. And remember, your boundaries are not just okay, they're necessary. They're sacred, they're yours. Protect them fiercely. I am so grateful again for this podcast and for this platform where I'm able to learn my way through life with the Gita, and I'm so glad to be able to take you guys along with me. I hope that this helps someone. This definitely helped me, and I hope it helps one of you. Until next time, Om Namah Shivaya.